Okay, so to simplify matters, I've just created these 3 objects, and what I want to talk about is a workflow improvement. So let me show you what I used to do. I used to go, okay, yeah, if I want to do this, I used to go to the menu, do the action on it, then select the other one, do the menu, and do the action on it. However, there's a more streamlined way of doing it, that if you are busy functioning with a whole lot of objects, you can actually just move from object to object and still maintain the editing tool as you're functioning. Let me explain a bit further. There are certain tools that if you select them, or I would suggest you select them first and then you come and select the objects. That's how they're designed to work in Affinity Designer. It's pretty much, I select my tool and I select the object without any modification keys. I can select them and utilize that. Okay, maybe we'll start with, I'm going to start on the right hand side with the gradient tool. So again, my workflow used to be select object, go to gradient tool, but now I'm going to show you how I work now. It's quite a bit better in my opinion. So I'll go to the gradient tool, and now what I do is with the gradient tool is select the object that I want to work on. So in this case, I just do one click, left mouse button click, and I'm here now. I can apply the gradient. So I left mouse, I hold down and I drag. So there I've had that same thing here. Now I'm not even going there. I'm not pressing any modification keys. I'm just clicking the bottom, selecting this, and it automatically will retain the color of the object. So it moves from the color of the object to a darker color. That gets chosen automatically by Affinity, which is really cool. You can always go and modify the actual darker color, but it chooses the optimal color for a gradient. You know, it's not black. It is, in this case, it's a green, a darker green. In this case, it's a darker blue. Same thing. If I'm here now, remember I've just clicked that and then click the object. Here I go. If I click here and I start drawing, there we have it. Okay, isn't that cool? If I come back here and I decide to move it the other way, I come back here, I decide to move it from left to right. So what you click, you first select the tool and then the object and then apply it. It's really cool. So the other part of it is that you don't need to only draw the gradient inside the object. So in this case here, you see I'm doing this, but it's actually related to the bottom because I've selected this bottom area. But if I come here and I click here, if I do this, you'll see the gradient here. But I can go outside and draw the gradient across like that. Okay, which is what you can do normally, but I think a lot of people always just draw a gradient from inside the object or slightly out. Now the thing is, I can select this area at the bottom and draw the gradient over here. Okay, it still applies there. No matter where I draw it, the direction and everything, it still applies there. So we can realize that once we in that tool, we have the flexibility of creating these different gradients without having to use any other shortcut keys. Okay, so I'm going to just go in here and delete this so I can delete these gradients. I want to get back to the colors here. So what happens if I want to create a gradient that goes from this object to the second object? That's doable. Again, we go to the gradient tool. I select this object and I come here and I click shift. I hold shift and left mouse click. So now I've selected these 2 objects you can see in my layers palette. Then what I do is I'm going to just drag the gradient across. But interesting here, your colors. Let's see if I select this one first. Keep shift down, select this one. Okay, so I first selected the green. Now if I draw a gradient, it chooses which object I selected first. So if I wanted to do all 3 of these together, and I wanted it to be this green, I first have to select this green, and then I can select, keep shift down, select the others, and when I draw a gradient, it will pull across all of them, but use the one that I selected first. Okay, you can select them and group them and then do the gradient, but it's really not necessary. A shift would just be much better, unless you have like 20 selections, little tiny selections that you want to pull the gradient across all of them. And then you don't want to all the time select every 20 again. Then you can select them, group them, and it will work exactly the same. The other tool that also works with this kind of select tool and then select object and apply is the knife tool. Knife tool really handy, so as you can see, and by default I've selected all three already with a gradient, so I'm going to just click off here. Same thing applies here. If I go and I click here and I draw a line through here, I've broken this into two sections. If I just go to the move tool, I can, just double click that, take that. I've actually cut that with the knife tool. Okay, so I'm going to undo. So there I could cut it through. I'm going to just undo even the cut itself. So the knife, if I've selected here, select knife. If I select this, it's going to cut through here. There we go. If I cut here, it's going to cut through there because I have that selected. Now let me undo that. What happens if I select this green one and keep shift down and select this? And I cut right the way through here. What's going to happen? It's going to do those cuts exactly like that. If I cut down here, it's going to do the cuts like that. Okay, so the knife tool also works with, you select knife tool and you can do multiple selections. Let's just do it for all three of them. If I click here, keep shift, I'm going to draw the knife tool through here, down here, up there, down there, and through here. And there you see it does all the cuts in there. And then every one of these pieces are cut from each other, etc. Okay. So remember, if you're using the tool again, select the tool, select the object, apply what you want to in that. Okay. Let me undo all of this. There we go. Okay, so that is the gradient tool and the knife tool. I didn't put knife tool over here, my bad. The other one is the transparency tool. They all work the same, and I'm just do one example. If I go here, transparency, you see I'm so used to selecting object, go click transparency tool, select object, and then drag. If I undo that, if I go select object, and keep shift down and select object and then do the gradient across, you can see something kind of different happening. Respects the color, seems to respect the color that's in that area. Let's see if it does. Yep. Okay, so it works a bit differently. So if we came here now and I've got the gradient tool and I select here and shift here and I draw a gradient tool across here, do you notice what it does is it keeps the color of the object. Not like the gradient tool, the transparency tool keeps the object colors through there. Okay, so what are the other tools that I just want to cover? It's the vector crop tool. Now, if I select, bad habit. If I select the tool, select there, and I'm going to keep shift down and select here. Yeah, this probably helps when you are busy working with 4 or 5 different shapes that you want to crop, but you don't want every time click on them. You can come, do a modification, just move across, do a modification, move to the other one and do a modification. So you're kind of multiple selecting, but it doesn't, because you've selected them, doesn't automatically when you move the one proportionately decrease the other one. It's just a multiple selection, so you don't have to hop in between. However, this is a bit of a overkill, because if I go here, I can do the crop here, I can come here, I can click and do this, I go there again, I can click and do that. So I can do multiple cropping by selecting the objects independently, but the multiple selection just helps from moving in between them much quicker. Kind of workflow improvement there. Okay, so that's the crop tool. So the next thing I just want to show you is if we come to the corner tool. So if I click this object here and I keep shift down and click this object, maybe before I do that, maybe I should just add maybe multiple sort of shape objects. Say you're doing a user interface and you want to have all these corners equally rounded. If I multiple select, I don't have the option for rounding the corners together. Again, we go to rounded corners, click here, keep the shift button down, do multiple selections. Say I want all these corners to be equally rounded. Okay, I can click here on the radius, but it won't do anything because these are still sort of, if I can call it, parametric objects. So what I would do is I've clicked the corner tool and made the multiple selection. I can draw a box around this to select all of these nodes. Now, if this was an object, the green one, and I didn't want to run over that nodes, I could also just on a click off, I could click, shift click, shift click, shift click, and then I could use the Alt key and hold it down when I'm making a node selection. This is going to create a kind of a marquee node selection. So I could avoid if necessary. But in this case, it's not necessary. So I've selected all of these nodes. Now what I can do is I can go in and type a radius of, the reason why I can type in the radius here now is because it's working with the corner tool. It knows it's only working on the corners. But once I've selected, I can say 5. And you see every single one goes down to 5 with that particular setting. Only challenge now is if I want to modify that, I don't have another. I can go Control Z and then come back with maybe 15 and enter. And the nice thing is here now, each one of these, if I'm happy with that, I can go off it. Each one of these are rounded exactly the same like the others, within relation to the sizes even. So if I go Control Z, if I choose not to, I'm going to select here now corner. If I choose not to type it in there and I just want to visually edit it, click there, shift, click there, shift, shift, shift. I can also make the multiple selection and I can visually grab one of them and size them accordingly and visually see how they all modify. So they're all linked to each other. If I'm happy with that, I click off there and I have all of them edited. So here you can have also that group action taking place. And say this one looks a bit too there, I can just modify each one differently. Okay, so if I take that one and I select these nodes and I move this one, you're going to see it's going to do that movement of the whole thing. It doesn't just move that node because I've selected. So it behaves slightly different in certain situations. But yeah, I think the final thing I want to show is just this. If I use the knife cutting tool there and I select this object, if I draw through there, I've cut this into 2 sections. If I go here now and I click on here, oops, let me just get to the move tool. I've cut it into Control Z, get rid of that cut. The same thing would apply with a knife tool. If I go, I select here, and if I select, keep shift down, select this one here, both these objects are selected. So if I cut through here and I cut through here, it will cut both objects. Okay, if I select this one here and I cut through here and cut through there, you'll see the cuts will appear. So I'm going to just drop in a different color here so we can see these colors being a bit, maybe do that. Okay, so we've got different colors. Just use the fill tool to put it over there. So there we have it being able to cut multiple selections once we're using the knife tool. And again, we'll end off by just showing you that if I had to choose gradients here and I want everything to have a blue gradient, I could select first come to gradient tool, select the first one is going to determine my color, keep shift down, select the others, and maybe I'm going to leave this as brown, and then I draw the gradient. The gradient is only going to pull through the ones I've selected there. and not affect this one. Okay, and remember, the first one you select determines the gradient. Now this is really cool. If you select these objects and you go to the Boolean tool and you merge them all, you click merge them, add them all, it will retain the gradient across those three, which is really cool. So then you can modify it as a unified area. So that's actually a great way of dropping in colors, using the gradient, and then merging it into one. Remember, click the tool, select the object. If you want multiple selections, shift and multiple select, and apply the things across those. So hopefully that is going to be quite cool for you. Yeah, speed up your workflow. So have a great day, be blessed, and enjoy editing in Affinity Designer.